Hello viewers! Today marks the release of the latest version of Biscuit Box, which is 3.5. For everyone who doesn't know yet what Biscuit Box actually is and does, it is a stack for RapidWeaver, and it helps you to be GDPR compliant with your page. What it does is it displays an overlay on your page, and in this overlay, you can inform your visitor about your privacy policies, about cookies, about scripts, and all these things. And your visitor has the option to choose either to accept the content or to decline the content. From then on, we can take different routes. For example, we can display content depending on the visitor's choice. In this video, I'm going to tell you about all the details in Biscuit Box, about all the 4 stacks and substacks which it provides, and we are going to create a small project together and roll it out eventually. First up will be Biscuit Box, the main stack, and I'll tell you about all the settings and intricacies of it. Yeah, Biscuit Box. Let's open RapidWeaver. This is a new stacks page, as you can see, and I've put all the Biscuit Box stacks already into their own folder. Now, first of all, Biscuit Box works with all kinds of stacks. It has been tested with all kinds of frameworks which are on the market, but you can also use the native stacks. And for the beginning, I will use these, and later on I will show you how it works in conjunction with my platform framework, which is just an example for all the other frameworks which are on the market. Let's first drop in some content which will be available all the time, regardless of the decision of our visitor. That starts with a kind of a header and some sample text. I'm not going into detail here because this is just to show you how the layout will work later on. Now let's decide to drop on the Biscuit Box stack, and that works just by dropping it on the page. Now you see actually 3 drop zones. First one for info text and the second 2 for the relevant buttons. Here as well, I'm just dropping in the standard stacks which come with a stacks add-on. I'll say here, for example, do you accept cookies? And subsequently, we have to provide 2 buttons. With the buttons, it is very simple. You just drop in the button stack. It can be any button stack which is on the market. You just drop it in. You don't have to configure the link or anything. All you have to do is give it the right wording, like I do right now. For yes, for accept, and no for decline. If you want, you can also change their color. Let's give the yes one a nice bright green, and the decline button shall be red. That's basically all you have to do. We already have a functioning Biscuit Box stack, and we can give it a little bit a more distinctive layout by providing a shading. As you can see here, you can choose any kind of color as the background color for your Biscuit Box. I usually just choose a neutral gray. And as you can see, we also have the opacity available, which I always recommend because that makes it stand out a little bit better. And I, in this case, choose opacity of 90%. Now we can pop into our preview, and you see that there is our pop-up or overlay of Biscuit Box above the normal content, and the opacity lets it shine through a little bit. We could also already say, do you accept cookies? Yes, in this case, and it just disappears, and the stack will remember my decision for the future. We'll see later on how we can influence that. However, if we are developing our web page, it is a nuisance to not see our Biscuit Box stack again because we just chose a certain option. So to circumvent this, I have this test mode checkbox here. And if I turn this on, I can just reopen my preview by clicking onto this eye icon twice, and my Biscuit Box overlay comes back again, and I can play around with it. Say no this time and click on the eye twice again to have it show up again. That makes developing and designing this thing much easier. Staying with these preview options, there's also another checkbox next to sample text, and this just displays a kind of a sample text which you can use as a starting point for your info text. And it's only visible in edit mode. By the way, coming back to test mode, you can leave that on even if you publish your page. The stack will make sure that this test mode will never see the productive or the final page on your web server ever. So you can be sure that the functionality will be not influenced by the setting which you have here for edit and preview mode. Let's turn off the sample text because it makes it a little bit cluttered here. Let's go on over these settings which we have for Biscuit Box here. The first ones, of course, are just kind of layout influencers. So let's quickly go over them top to bottom. We have, first of all, the pop-up width. Usually, if I have it to 100%, that means that it occupies the entire width of your browser window in this case. You can make it smaller, or you can choose another measurement unit than percent, but I think that makes it just a little bit easier to understand what you're dealing with. If it is smaller than the entire width of your browser window, you can also align it horizontally, either left bound or right bound or centered. Next is an interesting one, which is called the pop-up position. We can say it should show up at the top of the page, or you can have it at the bottom of the page. I'll quickly show you how that works. Let's go into preview mode, and currently it is set to be at the top. Now I just change it to bottom, and now you have it, of course, on the bottom, exactly as what it says on the tin. Let's go back to the top and have a look at the next options, which is the button position, which is a pretty cool one. Right now it is in line with the text, meaning we have the text on the left and then we have on the right the two buttons arranged horizontally. Then we can have the buttons below the text, so if you have a little bit more text, you can arrange the buttons underneath and it looks like this. The third one is super cool, and I think this is really a standout point. This is the so-called free mode. So if we have a look at free mode in the edit window, you just see the box of Biscuit Box. See what I did there? And a plus sign. Behind the plus sign, there are two types of button drop zones. First, the accept button, and then there is the decline button. Nothing special up to now, and we can now just drop button stacks into these drop zones and name them accordingly again, like yes and no. And give them a different color so that we have visible and visual distinction. All right. This is done. But now, what else can we do with this? Why is this now called free mode? I take this out a little bit a step further and drop in a 3-column stack into Biscuit Box. And the cool thing is I can now arrange my text here or even in the middle like this. And I can put my buttons, for example, like this. A completely weird design, of course, I understand that, but it's just to give you a little bit of an impression what you can do with free mode. You can drop in much more. Like, for example, some kind of header below, header below. And yeah, this is basically gives you all options to design your personal and very individual Biscuit Box overlay. Let's have a quick look at what it looks like in preview mode. And here you have it. That's the free mode for you. Let's just hop back into one of the standard modes, which makes it a little bit easier to explain the remaining options. Next up, below the button position, we can tackle the text width, which only influences the standard modes. This option is, of course, turned off when you're in free mode. Then also we can have a vertical alignment, and if you experiment with these settings, you will quickly find out what they do and how it influences the layout of your little Biscuit Box overlay. Next we have background color, and you remember I already used that to create this gray background color with 90% opacity. Then we can give this thing a whole padding, that the contents gets a little bit more separation from the corners of your page, from the sides of your page rather. And then you can also influence its behavior in terms of responsive design. Here you can set the assumed sizes for medium and large screen sizes, and also there are special settings for mobile layout. So if you have, for example, a mobile phone or a smaller tablet, you can give it a particular design for these devices. Implied consent is a little bit a political one. In general, Biscuit Box assumes that the visitor wants to decide first if cookies or scripts or whatever is loaded onto the page. If implied consent is turned on, this whole logic is turned around. Meaning that first everything is loaded onto the page, and then if the visitor changes their mind, saying basically no, I don't accept, then the page is reloaded without this content like cookies and scripts and so on and so on. Meaning everything which was loaded initially already had a chance to post and store critical content and scrape certain information from the browser and transfer it to wherever. So we are reacting after the fact. And one important thing, Biscuit Box cannot remove cookies or whatever afterwards. It can only prevent it from being loaded. That's why I always say, do not choose implied consent. It is also critical if you are in an area where GDPR is enforced or is in place. Implied consent is not compliant, not at all. And honestly, if you choose implied consent, why bother with something like Biscuit Box at all? Anyways, implied consent should always be turned off, particularly in areas where GDPR is in place. Next up is expiry days. Per default, it's 1 year, 365 days. Another good value would, for example, be 30 days, like a month. Let's now turn to a very important section of Biscuit Box, which is the scripts area. You have two big text areas. The first one is called Analytics Snippet and is actually reserved for the Google Analytics snippet. If you don't have it, just leave it open. That's fine. Additionally, you can load extra code in the text box below. What's very, very important is that in neither of these text boxes there are any script/script tags. If that's in, there will be chaos and the page will not properly load, and so on and so on. Usually if that happens, it's a copy mistake. So make sure if you use these two script or text boxes to put your scripts in, that there is no JavaScript script and /script tag. Quickly talking about the analytics snippet, in the video description below, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm leaving you an example for a Google Analytics snippet, and you just change your Google Analytics ID accordingly. If you're not watching this on YouTube, please hop into the Biscuit Box documentation and copy the Google Analytics script from there. Further down, we have 4 switches to turn on external scripts. I'm going to show you an example here. If I turn these lamps on, then I get a link area where I can link external scripts to be loaded onto my page. This can be either a URL like here, or you can also load a script from the RapidWeaver resources. And the scripts themselves can either be JavaScript, like JS as I have it here, or it could be also CSS. Now we're coming to a very, very cool section, which is Biscuit Box content. And this opens a lot of options for you. And let's just turn on load conditional content. What does that mean? We can configure Biscuit Box so that depending on the decision of our visitor, it can load either content which he has consented to, or if he has declined, or if they have declined, that we can load completely different content. Let's think of a simple example. You want to display a video on your page, and usually you want it to load from YouTube. If you have the visitor's consent, then you can set the consent link here accordingly. If they decline, you could display a completely different content. You could, for example, show a message like, too bad, you declined, or you could still show a video, but from a local resource. Both is possible with Biscuit Box. I'm going to show you in the next section how that works in detail. Lastly, here on Biscuit Box, we have the Z or Z index for our American viewers. Everybody who knows a little bit about CSS and HTML, you sometimes have stacks which also use Z indexes, and there could be a clash between Biscuit Box and these stacks. Here you have the option to adjust the level of your Biscuit Box overlay. Now let's have a quick look at the Revoke Stack, which is also new in release 3.5. This also brings you a step further to GDPR compliance. We have the Revoke Stack here, and I just drop it on my page where also Biscuit Box sits. You could also put it, for example, in the header of the page, call it like manage my cookies, or you can also put it in the footer in a very unobtrusive position, and instead of a button you just drop in a link. That also works. I'll show you the whole thing with a button as usual in this video. I'm just using the standard stacks button, and I'm changing the wording, revoke my decision. And there's nothing else to do. It already works. Let me demonstrate. I go on to preview. I'm saying, do you accept cookies? Yes. And now if the visitor changes their mind, they can just click that button and the decision is basically rolled back. The same applies if they decline cookies and scripts, and they can still change their option by revoking the decision. Very simple, very straightforward, great advantage in Biscuit Box. Let's now turn to the conditional content, which I've mentioned earlier in the Biscuit Box section. And this is a little bit more complex, and I will demonstrate how to use it in conjunction with a framework. In my case, I'm using my platform framework as an example. So in order to display different content depending on the visitor's decision, we first have to create basically the content itself. And we do that by using normal stacks pages as basically the whole playpen or design area for these pages or for that content. So the first step is to just add a new stacks page. And let's just call this one consent. And what's very important is that you do not link this page into your menu structure or anywhere else, because here the content will be exclusively reserved to be displayed inside Biscuit Box at certain places. You will see how that works in a few minutes. So let's just mark this page and go over to the general settings and turn off the show in navigation. That's very, very important. Now, this page is a normal RapidWeaver or Stacks page. Now we have to make it specific Biscuit Box context-sensitive content. There's a special stack here for this purpose, which is called content. I'll just drop it here, and I'm getting a new drop zone for exactly that. Now, we only have consent content. For the decline content, let's just duplicate this page and rename it to decline. You will later see how we use these page names. In the next step, we are going to design our consent content. And as I said, I'm going to use the platform framework as an example. And first of all comes the management stack. And I drop this outside the content stack. Why? Because I only want this to enable the platform stack and for all its substacks to display properly. Later on, we do not need the management stack anymore because we are going to drop it onto the main page. And there is no need to load stuff double and triple. Now let's design the content itself. I'm just dropping in a little title. Say this is consent content. And I'm just dropping in some kind of a text area so that we have something to display. Very good. Let's now do the same on the decline side. Drop in the management stack outside of the content stack. Put in a title, say decline content. And a little bit of a text. Cool. The next step is to go back to our main page. Now we can use the placeholder to individually choose the places for our content. I could, for example, put a placeholder here, and I can decide which kind of content should be displayed instead of this placeholder. Like, for example, here, the consent content, and I'm putting a second placeholder onto my page underneath the revoke decision button, just to give you an example, and declare this to be the decline content. Already very good. Now we have to tell Biscuit Box what actually is the consent and what is the decline content. So we drop it, going down to that content section. We have load conditional content activated, and now I'm setting the link to our consent page, which I'm doing right now. Set link. Same for the decline part. Go to page, choose the decline page, and set the link. That's all there is to do. Now we can have a look into the preview and enjoy our work. As you can see, this is a normal presentation of Biscuit Box, and now we answer the question with yes, and we're getting our consent content. Since we've activated the test mode, I can just double click on the eye icon and have the decisions revoked and start with a no, and I'm getting my decline content. As you can see, I forgot one little thing, and that is to place my platform management stack onto this page to get the proper platform layout displayed. Let's go back to preview mode, and as you can see, the decline content is formatted properly. Revoke my decision, say yes, and the consent content. Do you notice that consent content is above the revoke button and the decline content is below the revoke button, exactly as we designed it with our positioning of the placeholders? If I wanted both above the revoke button, I can do that as you just saw, and this is how basically it shows up in the preview. both above the Revoke button. This concludes my video about Biscuit Box Release 3.5. I hope this was helpful for you, or at least entertaining. In both cases, I hope that you will use Biscuit Box in your next project. See you soon. Bye-bye.